All right, everybody. Hey, welcome back to Cowboy Criminology. I'm your host, Derek Judd. Of course, I'm the Cowboy Criminologist. So we're in part 3 right now, talking about Gerard John Schaefer. Uh, we're starting to see how the fabric of Gerard John Schaefer started to unravel. Uh, his first marriage was failing. He was being let go from his career. And this was the first time that we could actually pinpoint when he committed a murder. But the highs in Schaefer's life were often punctuated by intense lows, and even the highs weren't really highs. Um, he often found himself with his second marriage to Teresa Dean. He found himself in a situation where he had everything he wanted in a lover, in a wife, but he found himself still wanting more. He felt entitled to more. There was just something in him. He was never going to be satisfied, which is a common thread that ties a lot of serial killers together. They're never satisfied. Um, a lot of criminologists describe it as they're chasing a rush. They're chasing the high of the first kill, and they're always trying to recreate that, or they're trying to relive a fantasy or bring a fantasy to life that never lives up to reality. I don't think that was the case with Gerard John Schaefer. With Schaefer, I think he really thought that he was so smart that he was never going to be caught. Not by law enforcement, not by his victims, nothing. I really believe that in his mind, he was such a slick killer that he never thought anything could be tied to it. Now, Gerard John Schaefer's law enforcement career thus far has lasted about 6 months, okay? He's with the Martin County Sheriff's Office in Florida for about 28 days. Okay. He started June 23rd of 1972. July 21st, 1972, he's rolling around. He's been there for about a month. Things are going pretty good. Beautiful summer day in Florida. Everything's going perfect. Why wouldn't it be? Summertime in Florida. It's hard to beat. So Schaefer sees two friends that are hitchhiking. Nancy Ellen Trotter, 18, and Paula Sue Wells, who's 17. And he's on duty. He's in his patrol car. And he sees them and he stops to check on them one thing or another, like any good police officer will do. He finds out that they're going to stay somewhere in Stuart, Florida on their way to Jensen Beach the following day. So Schaefer reads them the riot act, hey, it's so dangerous to be out hitchhiking. Y'all really shouldn't be doing this. But I'm going to go ahead and if y'all want to get in with me, I will go ahead and I will take you to your destination. And then that way, at least I know you're safe. Oh my goodness, you're the nicest law enforcement officer ever. How come all cops can't be like you? One thing or another. Later on, the girls would testify that they actually heard Schaefer use his in-car radio to contact the sheriff's office, tell them he was doing a transport. Now, today, law enforcement usually, as a general rule, will not transport unless there's an official capacity behind it. But in a case like this, the officer would give his location, say that he's transporting two females, give his starting mileage, destination, and ending mileage. And if he's smart, he's going to have his body camera on. He's going to flip around his in-car camera so the camera can see the people being transported. And then he's going to make sure that he has absolutely no association with those two outside of an official capacity, because that's how bad things happen. That's how problems start, with innuendo, false accusations, one thing or another. So he finds out that the girls aren't from Florida. So, okay, hey, I'll tell you what. Since you're going to the beach tomorrow, instead of you hitchhiking, how about I come and pick you up and I'll take you to the beach tomorrow? And they're like, oh, that'll be great. He's such a nice guy. How wonderful is it that, he's looking out for us in one thing or another. So the next day, Schaefer goes and he picks the girls up, but he's in his personal vehicle and he's not in uniform, he's in civilian clothes. And this kind of creeps the girls out, but he says that he's on an undercover assignment, and so he's driving an unmarked vehicle and he's in civilian clothes. They hem and haw about it, and you know what? He's been so good to them up to this point. They have no reason to suspect anything's amiss. He's a police officer. They know where he works. What can possibly go wrong? Well, pretty soon they find out exactly how much can go wrong. Because when he starts driving in a different direction than the beach, the girls realize something's wrong. Now, Schaefer flips on the girls and he takes them to one of his favorite spots. And when he takes them to this location, it's been described as a mangrove swamp and some kind of vegetation that I can't pronounce. Manculosa, something like that. Anyway, not relevant to the story. But what Schaefer does is he binds the girls' arms and he forces them to march to these trees. Now, these trees, just because of their bark and their location, they're very, very slippery. So he has them bound, and then he ties nooses around their necks, ties the nooses to the trees, and he takes up enough slack that they have to stand upright, because if they slip, they will fall and they will hang themselves. If they struggle, they fall and hang themselves. If they fail to comply, kicks their feet out from under them and they hang themselves. And the entire time he's talking to them, saying this is what happens when you hitchhike and these are the horrible things. And then he just starts describing in great detail what he's going to do. He's taking pictures of them and, he's going through all of these things. He's threatening to sell them into sex trafficking. And he says that he's going to leave them to go meet with somebody who he's going to sell them to. Now, this is common in sexual sadists. When kidnapping a victim, there's a mysterious third party. It's a person, it's an entity that's used to instill a sense of fear into the victim. Cameron Hooker, who was responsible for kidnapping Colleen Stan in California in the late 70s, he used the ruse of the company. And the company was a group of human traffickers who were charged with keeping slaves in line for the masters. And the whole guise is, if you think I'm bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. You don't want to deal with these people. They're way worse than I am. What it was is Schaefer got to looking at his watch, realized, oh crap, I'm supposed to be on duty. Goes ahead, gets dressed, shows up for turnout, one thing or another, comes back around, and the girls are gone. So Schaefer sits there and he thinks to himself, well, crap. So he calls up Sheriff Crowder. And he says, Sheriff, I've done something foolish. You're going to be mad at me. Now, if this sounds like the phone call that you would absolutely love to get from one of your deputies as an elected or appointed official for a law enforcement agency, yeah, this is great, because you know that whatever this deputy is fixing to tell you, no good is going to come of it. Absolutely none. None whatsoever. So the sheriff orders Schaefer to return to the station, where he's immediately arrested. He's stripped of all of his authority. They take him out to, or they arrest him. They begin booking procedures, and the sheriff and the chief deputy, they take off because they're like, we have got to find these girls. And I would imagine that the parting words to the sheriff were something like, better pray to God we find them and they're still alive. So Schaefer tried to make this seem like he was just trying to scare the girls. I was just trying to get them to see how dangerous hitchhiking is, and I took it a little too far. Yeah. I mean, I guess you made your point the first day, and I'm sure as a sheriff with several years of law enforcement under his belt, he could not process what this deputy was telling him, especially a deputy who had been with him less than a month. So anyway, the sheriff and a chief deputy go out and they're looking for these girls, and they can't find them. They know the location. They're looking around. They don't see them. So what had happened is that Trotter and Wells had managed to escape. Okay. Um, the first one to escape, she actually tried to swim this canal that she was in, and she was actually found by a local law enforcement agency who saw something weird. It's like, why would this individual be swimming with their arms bound behind their back? Get her out of the water. She explains what happened, takes her to the police department, and as they're questioning her, the other one, she manages to escape, frees herself. Now, this is not a case of the girl saying, hey, you're on your own. That's not what happened. The first girl to get herself free was going to come back, was going to get help and come back. All right. But obviously, when you're in a situation where you're starting to get tired, you're starting to get fatigued, your muscles are getting weak, and you're starting to lose your footing, of course, maybe you're starting to think worst case scenario, one thing or another. Everything you hear, you start thinking about wild animals or people finding you in this state. And what if it's the guy that the deputy said was coming to get you? All of these things go through their heads. So when the second one escapes, she manages to make it to a roadway where she finds a passerby, and she gets taken to a local police department. So as the investigation is proceeding, the police department is hearing this tale, and they're thinking, this is the most incredible thing we've ever heard. Why would a police officer engage in this type of behavior? So they weren't sure of the deputy's name, and I believe he tried to go by Jerry Shepard or whatever. But anyway, he the girls go ahead and describe Schaefer in great detail, and they knew that he worked for the Martin County Sheriff's Office. How would you like to be getting that phone call as a sheriff? Hey, sheriff, yeah, this is Officer so and so at a neighboring jurisdiction, and this is going to sound weird, but we picked up two girls who said that they were abducted by 1-year deputies, tied up in a mangrove swamp with nooses around their neck. Um, Wait a minute. What? You just arrested a deputy for that. Hey, what does this guy look like? Yeah, is he? Yeah, I don't know, about 6 foot, dirty blonde hair. Yeah, that's him. We have him in custody. Oh, well, you're going to want to gather a team, come up to our department, and you're going to want to take some statements. As if this wasn't bad enough. Okay? And I'm having a lot of grace here because of the time and place, because in 2024 there is no way this would fly. Law enforcement takes Trotter and Wells back to where they were tied up. They allow law enforcement to bind their hands behind their backs and reattach the nooses so that they could be photographed in the positions that Schaefer had left them. Now, the amount of courage that these girls were able to show to go back and let law enforcement do that, it's I couldn't find anything to see if there had been any female deputies, female officers, any female personnel there, just to give them that sense of comfort. But I promise you, in 2024, law enforcement would not try that without a victims advocate, social worker, grief counselor, female relative, somebody to be there to explain why they needed to go back and what evidence needed to be gathered. Like, it would be an entire discussion, and it certainly wouldn't take place within hours of their abduction. Okay. So this is really where, for most people, Gerard John Schaefer's story starts. Right here with the Trotter and Wells kidnapping. And like I said, it goes back, it jumps forward based on the evidence that's collected, evidence that's come to light. But for us trying to go in chronological order, it's a little more academic, maybe not quite as fun, not quite as entertaining, but it's important to understand what was going on in Schaefer's life to get him to this point. So now he's arraigned, and he goes before a judge, and the judge basically looks at him and says, "You know what, deputy, you are a special kind of stupid to think that this would have been appropriate under any circumstance. What in the world is wrong with you? I mean, were you eating paint chips as a kid? Are you sniffing glue? Are you taking drugs? Because there has to be some reason that you did something just so astronomically stupid." And his answer to the judge was, "Well, Judge, I was trying to teach them a lesson and things got out of hand." For starters. Okay. So that's going to do it for this week of Serial Killer Saturdays. I am going to go ahead. I've got 3 more parts to this, parts 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to talk about what happened when he was out on bond. Yeah. If you're not intimately familiar with my issues about bonding cases like this, and this is really the case that started having me throw up the red flag and saying you cannot release people on bond when they commit these types of crimes. We're going to talk about his murder trial, and actually how the mother of one of his victims is the hero in this. I mean, obviously Trotter and Wells are rock stars in this story. They were instrumental in their own rescue and in making sure that Gerard John Schaefer was prosecuted. But one of the victims' mothers, um, for the two killings that he actually stood trial for originally, um, was the one who did who was the one who really went out and did all the footwork, did all the legwork to find Gerard John Schaefer. And we'll get more into that. We'll talk about the evidence that that was used against him, the evidence that was collected. We're going to talk about Sandra London, and we're also going to talk about uh, what it was like when he was convicted, and what his life was like behind bars. So, y'all, thank you again for spending time with me on this Saturday. My name's Derek Judd. I'm the Cowboy Criminologist. Thank you for watching Cowboy Criminology. Please like, subscribe, and share on your favorite social media platforms. And we'll see you next week where we go into parts 4, 5, and 6 of Gerard John Schaefer Jr. Y'all take care.